अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आज हम इस वीडियो में H.G.Wells के बारे में जानेंगे। ये पैदा हुए थे 1866 में और इनकी डेथ हुई थी 1946 में। इनका पूरा नाम है हर्बर्ट जॉर्ज वेल्स और H.G. वेल्स के नाम से ये जाने जाते हैं। मुख्तलिफ जॉनरा में इन्होंने लिखा नावल, हिस्ट्री, पॉलिटिक्स, सोशल कमेंट्री, टेक्स्ट बुक, रूल्स फॉर वॉर गेम। बेस्ट रिमेंबर किए जाते हैं साइंस फिक्शन नावल की वजह से और फादर ऑफ साइंस फिक्शन भी कहा जाता है। हुगो गार्न्सबैक और जियोस वॉर्न के साथ अर्ली ट्रेनिंग जो थी वो बायोलॉजी में थी और डार्विनियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में एक्सपर्ट माने जाते थे। In his later period, his works becoming increasingly political and didactic, and he wrote little fiction, science fiction. He himself indicated in some official documents that his profession was that of a journalist. In Tono Bungee, 1909, he did a diagnosis of English society as a whole. यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में हुगो गार्न्सबैक रीप्रिंट किया इनके वेल्स के वर्क को इन पल्प मैगजीन अमेजिंग स्टोरीज, जिनके जो नावल है केप 1905 में आया। हिस्ट्री ऑफ मिस्टर पॉली 1910 में बेस्ट फिक्शन माने जाते हैं और लोअर मिडिल क्लास सोसाइटी दस ही इज़ कम्पेयर टू चार्ल्स डिकन इन दिस रिस्पेक्ट। फैंटसीज जो थी इन्होंने लिखी द टाइम मशीन 1895, द इनविजिबल मैन 1897, वॉर ऑफ द वर्ल्ड 1898, फर्स्ट मैन ऑन द मून 1901. His interest in science made him a utopian optimist, and this point of view encouraged him to write didactic works. डायडेक्टिक वर्क्स भी इन्होंने लिखा है। मॉडर्न यूटोपिया 1905, न्यू वर्ल्ड फॉर ओल्ड 1908। पॉपुलर राइटर थे और मोस्ट नोटेबल इनका वर्क है पॉपुलराइजेशन द आउटलाइन ऑफ हिस्ट्री 1920। जोसेफ कॉनरेड ने इनको कहा है, यू डोंट रियली केयर फॉर पीपल बट यू थिंक दे कैन बी इम्प्रूव। आई डू बट आई नो दे कांट। इनके जो फर्स्ट पब्लिश वर्क था वो था टेक्स्ट बुक ऑफ बायोलॉजी, 1893 में ये आया। इन द फर्स्ट मैन ऑन द मून अ साइंटिफिक रोमांस इज प्रेजेंट इन विच टू प्रोटैगनिस्ट मिस्टर बैडफोर्ड एंड मिस्टर कैवर डिस्कवर एक्स्ट्रा टेरेस्ट्रियल इंसेक्ट लाइक क्रिएचर्स सेलेनिड्स ऑन द मून। उनको सेलेनिड्स मिले क्रिएचर चांद के ऊपर। H.G. Wells called his work The Island of Dr. Moreau as an exercise in youthful blasphemy. मेजर वर्क्स का जिक्र करें टेक्स्ट बुक ऑफ बायोलॉजी इन 1893, टाइम मशीन 1895, आइलैंड ऑफ डॉक्टर मोरो 1896, साइंस फिक्शन द इनविजिबल मैन 1897। ये एक और भी नावल है रैल्फ एलिसन का भी इसी टाइटल से नावल है। द वॉर ऑफ द वर्ल्ड 1898, द फर्स्ट मैन ऑन द मून 1901, मॉडर्न यूटोपिया 1905, किप्स 1905, न्यू वर्ल्ड फॉर ओल्ड 1908, टोनो बंगी 1909, हिस्ट्री ऑफ मिस्टर Polly 1910, the new Machiavelli 1911, outline of history 1920, mind at the end of its tether 1945, the open conspiracy 1982, the island of Dr. Moreau। ये इनके पेजर वर्क्स हैं। इनविजिबल मैन का डिस्कस करें। इट इज़ अ हॉरर साइंस फिक्शन नोवेला बाय वेल्स। इट रिगार्डिंग मॉडर्न वर्जन ऑफ रिग्स ऑफ गिग्स बाय प्लेटो। इट वाज ओरिजिनली serialized in Person Weekly 1897, published as a novel. In the same year, The Invisible Man is Griffin, a scientist who had devoted himself to research into optics and invents a way to change a body refractive index to that of air so that it absorbs and reflects no light and thus becomes invisible. He successfully carries out this process on himself but fails in attempt to reverse the procedure. In this novel, Griffin is betrayed by his assistant Thomas Marvell, who complains to the police about the invisible man. Griffin narrates the entire life story to Dr. Camp in his home. Griffin has taken shelter. At the end of the novel, Griffin is seized, assaulted and killed by a mob. As he dies, his naked body becomes visible. The Time Machine 1895. It is also science fiction novel published 1895, set in Victorian age. The daily newspaper Pall Mall Gazette appears in it. Wells popularized the concept of time travel that allows the operator to travel purposefully and selectively. The term time machine coined Wells is said to refer to such a vehicle. Book protagonist is an English scientist, gentleman inventor living in Richmond, Surrey in Victorian England. The narrator identifies the gentleman inventor as time traveler. The time traveler reveals that he has built a machine that is capable of carrying a person through time. The time traveler tests his device with a journey that takes him to AD 1802 701, where he meets Aloy, a society of small, elegant, childlike adults. Time traveler lost his time machine. At the end, time traveler returned to his Victorian age. Tono Bungay. It is a realistic autobiographical novel that is called arguably the most artistic book. It is about a condition of England, about empire. It is narrated by George Ponderero, who is persuaded to help develop the business of selling Tono Bungay, a patent medicine created by his ambitious uncle Edward. While the business empire of his uncle Edward collapsed, George tries to rescue his uncle, failing finance by stealing quantities of radioactive compound called quip. The novel ends with George finding another occupation, designing destroyer for the highest bidder. Modern utopia, because of its complexities and sophistication of its narrative structure, this novel is called not so much as modern as postmodern utopia. In the preface, Wells forecast incorrectly that modern utopia would be the last of series that began in 1901 with anticipation and included Mankind in the Making 1903. The novel is the adventure of two characters, the owner of the voice and the botanist, and it runs through 11 chapters. When their thumbprints are checked, it reveals that they have doubles in utopia. They go to search them, their doubles, and little by little they discover how utopia is organized. Utopia is a word with no positive compulsion at all for the adult utopian unless they fall upon him as penalties incurred. The First Man in the Moon, 1901. Scientifically romance है ये by Wells, who calls it one of his fantastic stories. The novel tells the story of the journey of a man to the moon undertaken by two protagonists, the businessman narrator Mr. Bedford and eccentric scientist Mr. Cavan. They discovered the moon is inhabited by sophisticated extraterrestrial civilization, insect-like creature called Selenites. Capes, 1905. Capes, the story of a simple soul. It is regarded masterpiece. H.G.Wells, the protagonist, is Arthur R.T. Capes. Novel depicts how embarrassing sudden prosperity can be to poor man. Arthur Capes is unlettered assistant into draper's shop who unexpectedly inherits £1,200 a year. Capes is enraged to a young lady of the aristocracy without money, with the ambition to shine in her circle. He sets about task of grooming Capes for the role as a husband. The problem: a correct table manner, correct dress in general, and aristocratic deportation drives poor Capes into desperation. Capes marries in his boyhood love and now a domestic servant, but the troubles of Capes do not end. Ultimately, his happiness begins only when he sets up again as a shopkeeper.